Peter Cook. Peter, if you could come forward. Peter's with CSIRO and we'll be talking about the Adelaide Plains groundwater study and the assessment of that. Thanks.
Yes, thanks. So this is a much larger scale project funded through the Goyder Institute. It's a 2-year project that's in its early stages, really. Flinders University are the head organisation, also involving CSIRO, and it's really to better understand Adelaide's groundwater system and what the potential of that groundwater system is for increased groundwater extraction on the one hand, and also for increased water storage. Most of the councils in Adelaide, I know, have plans to increase managed aquifer recharge. What are the implications for that on a larger groundwater system? There's a number of things we don't understand. There's an awful lot, actually, we don't understand about Adelaide's groundwater. And it hasn't been the focus of very much research over the last 20 years or so. There's a number of major faults crossing Adelaide. We don't know how much water flows across them, whether those faults are barriers or whether the water flows through them. There are a couple of main aquifer systems that are often referred to as the T1 and the T2 tertiary aquifer systems. We don't really know how much water leaks between those. If you pump water into one, does it leak into the upper or lower one, or does it stay in the aquifer you put it? And we don't have a good understanding of what's happening down near the coastal boundary. So just very briefly, the approach. So we are assessing the age of the water across Adelaide. So we're doing a large amount of chemical sampling to measure how old the water is. We have a large, about a $700,000 drilling program jointly with Juna to install new piezometers sampling the different aquifer systems so we can see how much water moves between layers. We're coring the aquitard in probably a couple of different locations. So these results and our improved understanding will be fed into a groundwater model of the Adelaide system. There already is a groundwater model, but it has a very large number of uncertainties. So the aim of this project is to understand it better, reduce those uncertainties and improve the model. And that model will then be used to look at scenarios, how much additional water can be taken from Adelaide, what are the implications of the proposed or future increases in managed aquifer recharge operations. So this is just a picture showing in black, I guess, the area covered by the groundwater model in Adelaide. Also shown down south, we're also constructing a separate groundwater model, looking at the Wollonga groundwater system, McLaren Vale area, which also has managed aquifer recharge using wastewater that's becoming a larger picture of, or a larger part of irrigation of the grapevines in that area. So this is just a schematic, just for people that aren't aware, roughly east-west across Adelaide. So here's the Adelaide CBD. So these two are the two main aquifer systems, the T1 and the T2, where most water is pumped from, and most of the MAR systems would be injecting into either the T1 or T2 system. So there's a big fault that runs pretty much through the middle of Adelaide, and there's also, so the hills are out here on the right. And there's a big fault called the Eden Burnside fault in this area that separates the hills from the plains. And so in the eastern part of Adelaide, these aquifers are very thin, and this is basement rock underneath them. And then when you pass this fault that runs pretty much through the centre of the city, the aquifers become much thicker over on the western side. So really, we don't understand how much water flows from the hills into the plains, and then how much water flows from the eastern half of Adelaide to the western half of Adelaide through this fault in the middle. And also how much water leaks between these aquifers, the T1 and the T2. So there's some of the main understandings that we want to get a handle on. So this is just a picture of the pumping bores in green and the MAR injection bores in purple throughout Adelaide. It's probably out of date. But it gives a picture, so the larger circles are the larger volumes of pumping or injectant. Probably out of date, but it gives a picture of the distribution. A lot of the pumping is up in the northern Adelaide Plains, where there's also a concentration of MAR in the north. In terms of numbers, there's about 25,000 megalitres per year of water pumped out of the Adelaide groundwater system. And there's also, on top of that, there's about 8,000 megalitres per year of managed aquifer recharge. Or they're the latest, very imprecise figures, but that's our general understanding of how much water's going in and going out of the system. And you can sort of see, this is Cooper's Brewery up here, large extraction. This is the West End Brewery just on the west of the city. Now, so as I said, we want to evaluate the potential for increasing pumping from groundwater system in Adelaide, and also most councils have plans to increase MAR or to expand existing operations. And so what's the potential for that, and also what impact will that have on the groundwater system? So I'm just going to change order. So in terms of impact on the groundwater system, this just shows 4 sites in Adelaide where we've got piezometers in the T1 and the T2 in the 2 main aquifer systems. And we can see, for example, near the Cooper's Brewery, large pumping from the T2 system, which is the blue. So previously, those aquifers were at different levels, and there was potential for water to leak from one to the other. Whereas large pumping from the T2 system has dropped that blue curve, and I've lost my mouse, here it is, so that now those aquifers are at similar levels. Whereas at another site, here just northeast of the city, the aquifers were at similar levels in the past. But here, large pumping from the shallower, the T1, has meant those aquifers are now at very, very different levels. And so there is now a potential for water to leak from one to the other that there wasn't in the past. So we want to understand how pumping and how MAR can change the hydraulics of the system. We also want to do, we think there's so one of the big unknowns is what are the hydraulic properties of the systems. And what we want to do is mine the database from where there's groundwater pumping, but where there's MAR. Are there systems where, if we know how much water we've been pumping into the aquifer for a long period of time, and we have observation bores around that, we can actually use those as very, very large-scale hydraulic tests and mine that information to see what that can tell us about the overall groundwater system in Adelaide. And I might leave